A former U.S. ambassador to Nigeria, John Campbell, last week declared that his country would never again support Nigeria's war against insurgency and terror for as long as her military fails to disprove allegations of pervasive human rights abuses in the ongoing campaign. For a look at what really constitutes human rights abuses within the context of the war and what the conventional rules of engagement are, we're now being joined by Liborous Oshoma, lawyer and human rights advocate. He'll also be looking at violation of rights in terms of the rights of the insurgents or the terrorists and the rights of members of the military itself. Again, what is the Nigerian government doing or must do to bring a fresh perspective and inject life into the military campaign? Welcome to the program. Good morning.
Good morning.
Liborous, good morning. Thank you for joining us. First of all, let us clarify the position purportedly taken by John Campbell, the Rabunche Senior Fellow at the Council on Foreign Relations. Does John Campbell now speak for the State Department? Because I find that story curious, saying that John Campbell says the U.S. will no longer support Nigeria on the basis of human rights of abuses. And that position, if indeed he says so, is contradictory, because in his latest book, Nigeria and U.S. relations, rethinking global diplomacy in post-colonial Africa, he was in fact advising the United States government not to apply the same framework that it applies to Western democracies to countries in Africa. If you can help clarify what exactly happened. But certainly, I find it difficult to believe that he's speaking the mind of the United States.
Thank you. First and foremost, if you remember, sometimes in December 2020, there was a report on human rights violation and especially, as regards the prosecution of the war against Boko Haram. And then the report went further to talk about acts of abuses, even women abuses against women's rights in Nigeria, and kidnapping generally, and all of that. And so if you look at that report vis-a-vis what the statement credited or made by John Campbell, and then the attitude of Americans generally, because even the ICC had been accused of bias against African leaders, because when it comes to international crime or prosecution of war crimes, it's always been about against African leaders. So if you put all of this together, you will you will understand that this attitude is not new, especially given the fact that we have been unable to look inward also in solving the problems that that's bedeviling the country generally, especially that of insecurity. There was a time when we did have the Nigerian Army School of Electrical Mechanical Engineering, somewhere around Bauchi, and another one in Edo State, to actually help refurbish and build equipment for the Nigerian Army. But that ended with Obasanjo's regime. And so at every turn you see us having to consistently look towards the West for equipment, for support, for training. And while this is going on, even the British government also is extending support to Nigeria. So it's I also find it curious to reconcile those positions, but it is what it is, especially given the fact when it has to do with Africa and our attitude to ourselves. Not to talk of even, getting assistance from the West. But I have I really, have my doubts as regards the statement. Because one, it didn't say they will never support. What he said was that the support would come if the human rights records improve. And then also he did say that there can be support in areas of training, and then in areas of not just training, in areas of also, capacity building. But that he confidently can say, because of the laws, the local laws in America, that prohibit the government from supporting, any country that is accused of human rights violations.
That's the Leahy law. the Leahy law. That's a relevant law.
Right, thank you for that, Liborious. But when we talk about the human rights violations, what exactly constitutes human rights violations, and what is the Nigerian military doing to address these lapses? Because from our perspective here in the media, what we tend to hear is complete denials, blanket denials. Amnesty International will make this allegation, the military will come out guns blazing, pardon the pun, and deny them. Should the army be less defensive and more introspective?
Yeah, I completely agree with you. First and foremost, we should understand that even in war situations, there are rules of engagement. Even in war situations, there are offenses that can be termed as murder. So, a situation where even you kill hostages willfully, those can be termed as murder. Situations where you occupy enemy territory and then also unarmed civilians, you abuse unarmed civilians using the weapon, all these are war crimes. Situations where indiscriminately you violate the rights of even enemies that you have taken hostage. So, talking about such scenario, now juxtapose this with what the military has been doing. If you remember, as far back as 2014, a name that has always been recurring, the Giwa Barracks Torture Center. Even this current government did use those to campaign against the previous government that they were not addressing these human rights abuses that were perpetrated by the military. And like you said, like you did say, it's always been the same approach, that of total denial. When the president in his inaugural speech in 2015 admitted that they were going to look holistically into the allegations of human rights violations raised by Amnesty International, even as far back as 2015, did tweet about it, and the Human Rights Amnesty International were indeed happy that for the first time Nigerian leader was going to set up, a committee to look into these violations. But that ended at that level, and the violations continued, the torture, the camps, and in some cases we saw videos where Nigerian army were slaughtering human beings as if they were killing goats, and the concept, they were about 3 years ago, there were allegations by the same Amnesty International accusing the Nigerian army of raping women in the IDP camps, and in some cases, denying them of their basic foods in return for sex. And so all of these issues were reported to the government and what the government would do. I remember Alhaji Lai Mohammed saying Amnesty International were indeed were agents of destabilization, and these allegations were just to destabilize and pen the government back. I had expected that in all of this, not to talk of, because John Campbell also raised the issue of police brutality, I had expected that the government would sit back and do it differently. Haven't used that same abuses, military abuses against the previous government. I was expecting that they would come on board and do something entirely different. But that was not to happen. In Iraq, if you remember, even the Nigerian military, the US military, were accused of human rights abuses. And what they did was to take steps to win back the confidence of the general public. How much of that is the military doing? They are not doing anything in that regard. Even if you remember, there was a report, the report I cited in 2020, accused the military of integrating child soldiers that were used as the civilian JTF. Some of them were used as civilian JTF. So all of these are issues that are before the public domain, but that the government and the military would rather not want people to talk about. The only way we can actually win back this war is not to consistently abuse victims that have, in some cases, that do not, have hope.
Mr. Liborous Oshoma, we'll go for a quick break now. We'll come back and we'll still ask more questions when we come back. Thank you for your time. All right, welcome back. We're still talking to Liborous Oshoma, still at Rise News Channel. Liborous, this conversation looks very nebulous to me, and I want to get it here. Recently, the State Department came out with a report as regards the incident in Lekki. We saw the slant of the report. Now, John Campbell is saying this. Like it was stated before, I mean, we have those acts that America says anywhere there's human rights abuses, we'll definitely not support. America's got the Leahy law, like you pointed out, Dr. Abati. In fact, recently, a couple of years ago, 2-3 years ago, they also expanded the Magnitsky Act, to cover foreign nations. At first, it was just, for Russians as regards, the killing of Magnitsky and the likes. But now they expanded it, so there's a global sort of like human rights Magnitsky Act that is also dealing with foreign nations and human rights abuses. But you now see a report by the same State Department on an incident in Lekki that is quite in dispute, and the panel of inquiry is going on, and at the same time you're hearing John Campbell say this. I don't get it.
I think that report, if you read the report clearly, the 109 pages report, it did not exonerate the government on the Lekki incident. What the report did say was that apart from the Amnesty International that claimed about 10 persons were killed, that there were no other organizations to actually verify the number of deaths, and as far as the Lekki toll gate incident was concerned. And they went further in that report to talk about, a lot of other human rights abuses from, including the gay rights issues, media restrictions, indiscriminate arrest, and all of that. So against that backdrop, if you take a holistic approach of the report, but Liborous, why did Femi Falana kick against the report? Because Femi Falana leads association of people that were hurt in that incident. He was the first to kick against that report, and he said, we've got facts, they didn't consult us in the report. So if Femi Falana kicked against the report, it was deemed exonerative for them. Yeah, the report, the aspect that Femi Falana kicked against was that of the Lekki shooting, that stated that apart from Amnesty International, claim of 10 persons, there were no verifiable claims. That's, like I said, it's not a complete exoneration of what happened. Lekki toll gate incident still remains a sad issue in the records, the human rights record of this administration. Whether the American government, had accepted what happened or not, or did say that there were still issues that were left unclarified. The issue remained that even in that report, the American government indicted the Nigerian government and the Nigerian military, including Nigerian police, the Nigerian security forces, heavily in all other areas. And so against that indictment, they are now saying that, look, against this record of human rights violations, we do not think that if these issues are not corrected, we will be able to consistently support you, in the fight against the insurgency. Which for me, it's broader, which is what, the government should be looking at, and not take the isolated case of the Lekki shooting that they said there were questions that were not answered, or that the number of casualties were unverified or corroborated by other agencies apart from Amnesty International. And then for Femi Falana, I don't know how much representation that this organization made in terms of before that report. We also saw that since even the panel of inquiry set up by the Lagos State government sitting, people had expected that the panel would sit timeously and address especially, that issue of Lekki toll, and then all of the human rights issues that were raised. Take, for example, all the torture centers that people had alluded to, including the one in Anambra State. How much of those centers have those panels and the government even talk about or address such issues? As we speak today, you still have every police station still has these same torture chambers. In some cases, they call them theaters. And you do not expect, the angels to come from heaven to point these areas to anybody, because there are people who have first-hand experiences, including some of us lawyers. Go to state anti-robbery in Ikeja, for example. It's the attitude of the average Nigerian police there, to even lawyers that have come to solicit for the cases of their clients. It's not that of a friendly one. And yet these are people who are presumed innocent. And so when you have such attitude, and then we're talking about human rights abuses, we're talking about fundamental objectives and directive principles of state policies, it is not a friendly one at all. And that's why I think it should be, ordinarily should be a wake-up call for government to say, you know what, just like we said in 2015, it's not too late in the day, let us take steps to actually correcting some of these issues. Some of the allegations were the fact that in the fight against insurgency, on the account of just an individual, uncorroborated account of an individual, if sometimes the army will raid an entire village, an entire community, and arrest people indiscriminately. In some cases, they are kept in torture chambers. Look at the recent one that is happening in Benue between the army and the communities. Someday also, maybe when American government decide to say something about it, we would just say, oh, maybe because American government had raised questions about it, then it didn't happen. But the fact still remains that people have been allegedly killed in those questionable circumstances. And we shouldn't allow it to continue.
Well, Liborous, you and I, we seem to agree on doubts that can be expressed about the position purportedly taken by John Campbell. Yes, John Campbell has been Deputy Assistant Secretary of State with focus on Africa. He's been ambassador, he's been political counselor in Nigeria. Yeah. He has written 3 books on Nigeria. He's also served in South Africa. He has the experience. He's 77 years old. He's been in the Foreign Service since 1975. Now, but I say that at best, as a senior fellow at the Council on Foreign Relations, what he has expressed is an opinion. Yeah. It's not likely to be taken. Now, but human rights has been a major issue in our bilateral relations with the United States. I recall that this had an impact on our war against Boko Haram, because under President Jonathan, when the Americans refused to assist us under President Obama with military, support, we went to the Israelis. We had a meeting with the Israelis. I was there, so I can't give details because that was a privilege, We went to the Russians. Everybody wanted to help Nigeria, but America blocked it, and President Obama was president at the time. But when President Trump came, we had the Americans now saying they will sell hardware to Nigeria, Toscano jets, right? Now we have President Biden. Do you think, even if this was a recommendation by John Campbell, that a President Biden who is reaching out to Africa and who wants to help developing countries, who has a globalist agenda, will take a recommendation that on the basis of human rights abuses, his administration should not help Nigeria with military support?
I do not, for me, I will not, if I'm in a position to advise, I will not advise that there shouldn't be assistance to Nigeria at all on the basis of that opinion. But what also we need to do, this is an opinion raised by a seasoned diplomat who should know. And then also, apart from that, there's also reports, including internal reports from Nigeria on human rights abuses, on the crime against humanity in our prosecution of the war against terror. What we should be doing at this stage is to ensure that we take those steps, no matter how little the steps should be, to actually, move away or create a divorce between these allegations and the fact that we're actually, taking steps to correct whatever misgivings there might have been. And like I said, thank God you were part of the previous administration. And this same government campaigned, used those human rights abuses to campaign against the previous government. They were very vociferous. Why are they not doing it differently as far as correcting those recommendations are concerned, those issues are concerned? And then also, you never can tell with the American government. One would have expected that with the position that Nigeria occupy in Africa, that Nigeria would be, a force to be reckoned with when it comes to creating relationship, bilateral relationship and support for West Africa and Africa in general. But over time, consistently, we had seen how we have underplayed that role, and that even smaller countries are taking it more seriously than us. Take the visit of President Barack Obama to Ghana rather than Nigeria. And, and even in that place, he didn't say that the solution to the problems of Africa lies in Africa. And that's why I've been an advocate of us looking inward, no matter how small, no matter how infant those steps are. Once we are able to look inward, then it will be easy for even our diplomats to say that, yes, Nigerians have taken steps to correct some of these issues that have been raised.
Yes,
quickly.
That's true. If I may, that's true, that if you actually take steps to address it, the policy can be changed. It's not set in stone. Well, you made an interesting point about Nigeria's position, but I want to look at Nigeria's position in a different way. It's often said that if Nigeria does topple over a precipice, it will be the hugest humanitarian disaster, hugest refugee crisis. So why are exceptions not made for us in the same way that they are made for Saudi? With their appalling human rights record, Saudi is getting American arms, is the #1 importer of U.S. arms in the world, and fueling the carnage in Yemen, ostensibly because Saudi Arabia is a stabilizing force in the Gulf.
Yeah, thank God you used that word. Saudi Arabia is a stabilizing force in the Gulf. What is the position of Nigeria in as far as the stability in West Africa and in Africa is concerned? Leadership, including now there's always we always provide them pebbles, human rights abuses. But in terms of all other areas, look at Nigerian economy generally. In which area have we, in all honesty, provide that stability that is needed in the region? So none. And so that's why, rather than look at Nigeria, you find a situation where, you know, these Western countries, in some cases, maybe to spite us or to jolt us back to reality, we look at smaller countries. And so that's why I believe that we cannot, no longer, in all honesty, begin to compare ourselves with the way we were, you know, in the 70s to where we are now. In terms of governance, in terms of corruption, because corruption also is one big issue that had consistently been raised against leadership here. When somebody provides support and then this support does not really get to the people that is meant for, and the support, rather than, you know, ameliorate the problems, would escalate. Also, you look at the degradation taking place in some of these, you know, the South-South region. How much of it have we been able to address? Look at the Ogoni cleanup that we talked about for more than 4 years now. We're still on it, and they've been back and forth. So these are some of the issues, apart from the human rights issues, these are some of the issues that every nation will want to look at in creating, you know, a relationship, in creating bilateral relationship. Why was the government of Muhammadu Buhari accepted by the Trump administration at inception? Because there was this belief that he was going to fight corruption, and fighting corruption would also naturally dovetail into addressing some of that little, you know, attendant issues that comes with it. But at the end of the day, the government fell flat-footed on that promise. And so nobody would now want to, you know, give grant support to a country where promises are rather observed in breach. That's basically what I think is happening here.
But we still mean a lot to them, because when we have our elections, they could send somebody like John Kerry to come over to ensure things go peacefully. And on that note, we'd like to say a big thank you to you. And also don't forget the Khashoggi issue. The Americans came out to confirm, but they said, we'll pat Saudi at the back. Anyway, thank you so much for your time, Liborous Oshoma.
My pleasure. Just like the Lekki issue now.